All right, let's review conflict. Conflict is fairly self-explanatory that it is a problem, it is a struggle that our characters face. We have two broad categories for conflict, external and internal. External conflict is outside forces, so something outside of the main character that is causing problems for the main character. And then internal conflict, which is a struggle that happens within the main character. You can see in our conflict diagram that the vast majority of conflicts end up being external, and that there's really only one internal conflict. But I would say most good stories have both internal and external conflict, and I'll explain that a little bit here. So when we talk about internal conflict, we're generally implying that a character is going to change. That internal conflicts causes characters to change. They struggle with a decision, their feelings, their emotions, their self-confidence, their morals. So internal conflict is present in most stories, most good stories, because it leads our characters to change. And then the second most common type of conflict would be person versus person. So one character versus another character, or one character versus a small group of characters. These are fight scenes, action movies, superhero movies would have person versus person conflict. Person versus society. So this isn't just one character versus another character, or one character versus a small group of characters, it's society itself. So the structures and systems within which this character lives. So the Hunger Games is a good example. Other good examples that were brought up in class would have been stories centered around slavery, so a system within which the characters are struggling to survive or to escape. Other ones could include perhaps maybe even a character in a school setting where the school was causing problems for the character, military, large organizations, so very large systems or organizations, or the society at large causes the main problem for our character. Person versus nature. So nature has to present an obstacle here, like a hurricane, a tornado, a tsunami, some kind of natural force creates the main problem. And last but not least is person versus fate. This is kind of the hardest one to find. Oftentimes, it's not always self-evident. So person versus fate involves a prediction that's made early on in the story that the character knows about and actively seeks to prevent throughout the story. A common example would be Romeo and Juliet, that they're kind of fated to have a tragic love story, which in the end ends up happening, even though they fight against it. So again, for person versus fate to exist, the prediction is made early in the story that something's going to happen to the main character, or the main character is going to become something. The character knows about this prediction, and they set out to prevent this prediction from happening. Another quick note on conflict in general, remember that most good stories have more than one conflict. Some will have many conflicts within. The main conflict is the one that leads us towards the climax, and the main conflict is the one that gets resolved within the climax. So if you're trying to figure out the story, there's several different conflicts. Whichever one is the one that really is the most important in the climax and gets resolved in the climax, that's going to be your main conflict.